What's up, TaskUs? A ridiculously good evening to everyone watching tonight. Welcome to our Unicorns at TaskUs event. My name is Rexler Bayani, your host for tonight, and I just want to ask, are you all excited? Alright, so let me feel that energy in our comment section. Go, go, go! Ito na natin to! Alright, so let's keep this energy. I just want to see that in the comment section, please, in all of our live streams. And don't forget to use our official hashtag unicorns at TaskUs, and of course, TaskUs Unicorns with Juan Miguel. All right, so let's keep this momentum going because we are going to jumpstart our Unicorns at TaskUs activity by featuring what CNN Life quoted. Severo is what you would call a multi-hyphenate. He is a poet, a writer, a screenwriter, a playwright, and an actor. And to officially get the ball rolling, let's kick it off with a game called hashtag ridiculously refreshing pop quiz. All right, so listen up, team, because this is how it's going to happen. So I will be asking 3 marvelous questions, and it will be about unicorns at TaskUs. So I will be reading the questions. You guys will be given 10 seconds to type in the answer in our comment section. The first person to answer will win 500 pesos worth of e-gift certificates from our organizers. How exciting is that, guys? All right. So we will have 2 representatives to give me the winners. All right. So kung sino man sa inyo ang may pinakamabilis at may pinakamalakas na daliri pag sa pagtatype, pag na wag kayo magkakamali, all right? Kayo ang magwawagi. All right, but it doesn't stop there because in order for us to consider your answers valid, please include your EID and your site when you send in your answers. Again, please include your EID and your site when you send in your answers in the comment section. At hindi po namin i-consider na valid yan kapag wala ang isa doon. So please be very careful, all right? Okay, so while we're also doing all of these things for TaskUs and for our event tonight, don't forget to use our official hashtags, and also don't forget to invite your friends who are still waiting, or rather who doesn't know the event yet. Feel free to invite everyone in TaskUs and continue supporting Unicorns at TaskUs. All right? Okay, so let's get it on. Here's our first question for the night. Let's see. All right, so question number 1. Name a TaskUs diversity and inclusion program that can be enjoyed by all TaskUs teammates. Timer starts now. And the correct answer is, are. All right, so we have 4. Those are self-ID, HMO for LGBTQIA partners, gender-inclusive restrooms, and SOGI trainings. All right, so we already have a winner. Let's now proceed to our second question. Okay, so there are 8 ERG leaders. Can you name at least one of them? Just one. Timer starts now. All right, so did anyone got the correct answer? All right. Okay. Okay, so let's see who our winner is. All right, so we already have one, and we will be revealing them later on. All right, so congratulations. And for the answers for this question, our 8 ERG leaders of Unicorns at TaskUs, we have Miss Ana Victoria Alcachupas, our executive sponsor. We have Bam Terol, ERG lead. We have Adi De La Cruz, ERG co-lead. We have Jonathan Lim, Professional and Development Committee. We have Shaina Marie Saba from our recruiting and retention lead. We have Mr. MJ Bilugan, our Outreach Development Committee, Jet Dayola, our Awareness and Education Committee lead, and also Rog Mariano, our Communications and PR Committee lead. All right. Okay, so let's now proceed to our last question for the night. And if you guys are wondering, this is probably the easiest one if you've been going through our email blasts. So what is the full name of our special guest for tonight? Timer starts now. All right. So our special guest is none other than Mr. Juan Miguel Severo himself. And congratulations to our winners. We already have them. All right. Thank you so much for participating in our game. And again, congratulations to all of our winners and for following our instructions. So at this point, feel free to stand by for the winners. Feel free to stand by because our organizers will be reaching out to you for your prizes. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So tonight, we are officially celebrating unicorns at TaskUs quarter activities. Our mission as an employee resource group is to cultivate a safe and inclusive environment as we are always been doing here in TaskUs. So within and outside the workplace, that empowers the LGBTQIA+ community and allies to collaborate, thrive, and take a stand against discrimination and social injustices. All right, so awareness and educating our community is our main focus for this quarter, and we would like to take a different approach. So similar to our rebranding here in TaskUs of being ridiculously refreshing, so we also have a very refreshing performance and of course a presentation from our guest tonight. But before anything else, I just like to remind everyone to chat in or comment in our or send in comments in our feed so that you guys could just a shout out if you guys want to, or to invite more of your friends to watch tonight. So again, don't forget to use our official hashtag for tonight. That is hashtag TaskUs Unicorns with Juan Miguel. All right. And also, we have a lot of topics to cover later, and those are brought to us by our special guests. So again, for our initiatives and for all the succeeding events of Unicorns at TaskUs, please continuously support the organization because they will never stop in spreading awareness for inclusivity and diversity here in TaskUs. And all right, so shout out to Carl Galliano. Hello from our engagement team from CHR. Greetings. All right, and okay, so we also have Thea. Thank you so much for joining our live stream. Okay, and we also have a lot to mention for tonight. So let's not forget to always acknowledge the representations that we have in our team. Let's not forget to say thank you to our hardworking teams who have been working for all day, all night, just for the betterment or like the continuous self-improvement of everyone in the company. You know, from the previous private events that we had, we already had Megan Young last year. We also had our very own Golden Pride event, if you can see. All right. So for those who still have the merchandise, feel free to wear this during our Pride celebration this year. All right. So now that we're all hyped up, I now know that we are all ready for our main event, for our main segment for tonight. So let's get this started. Here to give us a very special spoken word poetry performance and to share with us how can mainstream media best portray the LGBTQIA+ community. Ladies and gentlemen, TaskUs, let us all welcome Mr. Juan Miguel Severo.
Naniniwala ako sa aswang. Lumaki ako na kinukwentuhan ng mga chewin ko na galing Capi sa Taklan tungkol sa kanila, kaya naniniwala ako sa aswang. Naniniwala ako na kaya nila magpalit ng anyo. Na dapat mapayapa ang aking dibdib na marinig ang pagpalatak ng bibig ng tiktik dahil kapag malapit daw ang tiktik, ang ibig sabihin nun ay malayo ang aswang. At malamang iniisip mo na nababaliw na ako o napakadali ko namang mauto pero hindi ako nagsisinungaling. Naniniwala ako sa aswang. At naniniwala rin ako sa nuno. Naniniwala ako sa nuno yung maliliit na nilalang na nakatira umano sa mga punso na posibleng nandyan lang nagtatago sa likod ng puno. Kaya kinakagat ko ang daliri ko tuwing naalala ko na ayaw nila nang tinuturo dahil baka kunin nila ako sa gabi at tangayin sa karyan nila. At alam ko, wala pa akong kilala na kinuha nila. Pero mahirap nang sumugal. Kaya kapag ako ay nagturo sa isang masukal na gubat, kinakagat ko agad ang aking hituturo dahil madali akong maniwala. At naniniwala ako sa mga nuno. At total din lang ay sinasabi ko na mga kalokohan na to, siguro panahon na nga para malaman mo. Ang dami pang mga bagay na walang basehan ang pinaniniwalaan ko. Katulad ng kapag kumakain tayo ng magkasama at kinailangan mong umalis ng maaga, ay iniikot ko ang mga plato para hindi ka mapahamak sa kalsada. O kapag nalaglag ang tinidor ko, habang kumakain ako ng mag-isa, ay hinihiling ko na susurpresahin mo ako sa iyong pagbisita. Nakagat ko ang dila ko kanina at binigyan ako ng numero na sakto sa unang letra ng pangalan mo at inisip ko na sana nasa isip mo ako at kung nakagat mo ang dila mo kanina, malamang kasalanan ko yun dahil nasa isip kita. Nasa isip kita. Sa umaga. Kapag nakita ko kung anong oras na, iniisip ko kung nakarating ka na sa opisina, nasa isip kita. Sa tanghali. Alam kong nagtitipid ka pero kumain ka naman ng sapat para hindi ka nagugutom sa trabaho, di ba? Nasa isip kita. Sa hapon, malamang ay pagod na pagod ka na naman sa dami ng pinapagawa nila sa'yo na hindi mo kayang tapusin bago magdilim at nasa isip kita. Sa gabi, saan ka pupunta pagkatapos ng trabaho? Magbabaka sakali na baka pwede tayong magkita dahil gusto kitang makita dahil pasensya na, huwag ka sanang mairita pero gusto kitang makita dahil maniwala ka na minsan nakakasawa na nasa isip lang kita. Oo, hindi nga siguro ito ang tamang panahon para sabihin ko sa iyo ito bilang puro maligno at saka lamang lupa ang kaninang mga binabanggit ko pero intindihin mo, kung kaya kong maniwala sa mga bagay na walang basehan katulad ng mga to, bakit ako hindi maniniwala sa iyo? Sa atin, sa tayo. Kapag niningitian mo ako, naniniwala ako. Kapag hinahawakan mo ang kamay ko, naniniwala ako. Kapag inaakbayan mo ako, naniniwala ako. Kapag hinahalikan mo ako, naniniwala ako. Naniniwala ako dito. Naniniwala ako dito. Hindi ito laro. Hindi ito hanggang dito na lamang at maraming salamat. Naniniwala ako na kaya natin ito. Naniniwala ako na kung maging masakit man, kung pagdating sa dulo ay patayin man ako sa sakit ng saya na binibigay mo, magiging sulit ang lahat dahil naniwala ako sa iyo. Oo, ikaw ang tinuturo ko at hindi ko kakagatin ang daliri ko dahil gustong tangayin mo ako patungo sa kung saan mang kaharian mo, kagubatan mo gusto. Oo, ikaw ang sinisigaw nitong dibdib ko at hindi ako matatakot kung lalapitan mo ako dahil naniniwala ako sa iyo. Naniniwala ako dito, naniniwala ako na kaya natin ito at naniniwala rin ako sa karma na kung ano mang ibigay mo sa kalawakan ay siyang ibabalik nito sa iyo ng may interes pang kasama. Ilang beses ko nang isinilid ang puso ko sa garapon at itinapon ito sa dagat sa pag-asa na may magbabalik nito sa akin ng buo pa pero ang tagal na. At wala pa akong nakukuha. Kaya kung sakali lang na makita mo ang puso ko na inaanod sa aplaya, iniisip kung ano ang gagawin sa kanya, itatapon, itatabi o ipagsasawalang bahala, maghihintay ako sa desisyon mo. Maniwala ka, maghihintay ako. Ibalik mo sana. Thank you, TaskUs, for having me. Thank you very much for this initiative. Thank you for having me, for picking me to be the one to share my knowledge tungkol sa topic na to. Ako si Juan Miguel Severo, Gege. Ako ay isang spoken word artist, isang makata, isang aktor, isang manunulat. Ako ang series creator ng series na Gaya Sa Pelikula na pinalabas last year. And I am proud to be gay. And I am here to talk about queer representation in the Philippine media. But before that, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about sharks, mga pating. Next slide. Yan na pala. So, we are afraid of sharks. I grew up afraid of sharks. But according to the National Geographic website, we are not necessarily afraid of sharks. And to be honest, there are more than 465 known species ng sharks. They can range in sizes. Tapos yung mga kinakain nila ay fish, mollusks, plankton, marine mammals, other sharks, kapwa sharks. In short, humans are not on the menu. However, yung mga sharks, especially the great white shark, were catapulted into the public eye with the release of the film Jaws in the summer of 1975. The film is the story of this massive great white that terrorizes a seaside community. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. It's iconic. It's a film school staple. It's a pop culture phenomenon. And dahil sa pagiging hit ng Jaws all around the world, ang daming sumunod sa kanya na iba pang mga pelikula at palabas where it was perpetuated yung theme na ang sharks ay villains. Jaws inspired a lot of media from comics to cartoons, video games, more films. It reinforced our fear of sharks and made it look like the would-be villain of every beach trip that we will ever go to. Sa kanyang libro, sa isang libro na Shark Attacks, ang pagbagat, by Chapman, nakalagay roon na there is only 1 in 3,748,067 chance that we could be attacked or killed by a shark. And yet, grabe yung takot natin sa pating kumpara sa pagkalunod. Samantalang, humans, tayo, ay pumapatay ng 100 milyon na pating kada taon. Knowing this, what if sharks are able to tell their side of the story? What if they are able to tell their stories against us, the human race? What if they're given the platform that Steven Spielberg had? What I'm getting at is, because of a critically acclaimed box office hit and a very effective piece of literature and media, the villain reputation of sharks has become inedible in our collective psyche. This is the power of storytelling, of effective storytelling. This is the power of stories reaching as many people as it could. This is how a dominating narrative can affect public perception, opinion, reaction, and even treatment of an individual or a group. 2 years ago, Philippine cinema turned 100 years old. It celebrated its centennial. Now, we wonder, how has the representation of the LGBTQIA+ community been in Philippine media so far? So for the sole purpose of this talk, I'll divide how gay representation has been in the media in 3 sections and 3 generations. Post-war, or the boomers, Gen X, and then the millennials. At sa paghahati na to, gagamitin muna natin yung 3 sa pinakapalasak, pinakamadalas, na sentro ng mga kwento na to o ang nagsilbing representative ng LGBTQIA community sa media. I feel like alam niyo na kung sino yung ilan sa mga to, pero let's start. Next slide. Of course, ang una ay si Dolphy. Si Dolphy, of course, ay iconic for his many roles. Pero isa sa mga naging platforms talaga ni Dolphy para sa kanyang tagumpay ay ang pag-portray niya ng maraming queer characters. Cross-dressers, kung tawagin lang noon. Sa mga pelikula ni Dolphy, what we know now as transness, as being trans, is just a performance. And being queer, being effeminate, are made into a joke. It's Dolphy may be the central character of these films, but he is also the butt of the joke. At sa mga pelikula niya parate, yung masculinity at yung pagiging macho ang pinipedestal. It's worth noting na noong 2009, nung mas umuunlad na ang pagtingin ang gender sensitivity sa media, Dolphy was nominated for the National Artist Award for Film. But the selection committee didn't give him that award. And one of the reasons is that a lot of his films, although not directly his fault, peddled harmful stereotypes and notions about being gay. Next slide. This is usually because of the straight washing. It's a recurring theme of most media from post-war to even post-martial law, kung saan ang pagiging bading ay pwedeng palitan, pwedeng itatwa, pwedeng talikuran, pwedeng tapusin. How gay men can turn their backs from their queerness and choose the straight macho life. So because we don't have, I don't have a clip of the original Jack and Jill, played by Dolphy and Lolita Rodriguez from 1954, we will play the remake, this clip from the remake instead, which was from 1987, and Jack and Jill were played by Herbert Bautista and Sharon Cuneta. Let's see the clip.
Dali! Oh, dali! Ikaw naman! Oh,
Huwag na. Ikaw na lang.
ha?
Humingi ka ng tulong.
Ako, nakabahan ako eh.
Gago, baka lalaki ka. Mamamatay kami pa rin ng kapatid mo kung babakla-bakla ka. Sige na, umalis ka na.
Lalaki?
Mabuti pa yata kunin muna yung dalawa ron para makita kung paano ko puputulan to. Sige.
Lalaki? Oh, anayin mo pa yan. Tama mo na.
Yung babae. Magandang! Ayun! Ando siya! Kaya na! Kaya na! Bilis! Tatanayos na tayo!
Anyway, thank you. Nakita niyo kung paano it's so absurd. Buong buhay ni Jill, siya si Jill, si Jack si Sharon, kasi si Sharon naman sa pelikulang to ay quote-unquote tomboy. Tapos si Jill ay, yun nga, bading. Buong buhay ni Jill, effeminate siya. Buong buhay niya nag-identify siya as bakla. Pero yung definition niya ng bakla ay nakabase ng pelikula. Yung definition ng pelikula sa bakla ay nakabase doon sa kung paano siya gumalaw, kung paano siya magsalita. At hindi nang dahil sa kung sino ang minamahal niya. Una, yun yung isa niyang pagkakamali. Pangalawa, pinakita niya na parang ang kabaklaan ay something na kayang-kaya mong talikuran like that. Like, nag-shot lang ako, pinakita ko lang, nag-intercut lang ako kina Paquito sa previous scene ng isang shot ni Paquito, pagkatapos pagbalik sa kanya, lalaki, tapos lalaki, ganun na kaagad. So it reinforces the notion, especially the dominant narrative around the time, na you can cure gayness, you can cure queerness, na you can turn your back from it. Right? And this story, although hindi na natin siya nakikita sa media, thankfully, ngayon, hindi na natin nakikita itong mga ganito sa media. I think the last time I saw this sa media ay kay Michael V. sa sa isang Lenten special ng Itbulaga, early 2000s. Hindi na natin siya nakikita sa media right now, pero nagsistick pa rin siya sa utak ng mga matatanda, ng mga boomers, ng mga tatay, ng mga lolo natin, na akala nila kayang-kaya natin ganun, talikuran ng pagiging bakla ng ganun lang. At ang kabaklaan ay ini-equate sa pagiging duwag. Okay, next slide. Kaya importante, yung mga naging pelikula ni Dolphy na taliwas doon sa marami niyang pelikula kung saan ang pagiging bakla ay tampulan lang ng tukso. Kung saan queerness is just a joke. And what makes it different? I can say that one of the difference is yung ang tatay kong nanay ay dinirect ng isang queer filmmaker himself. Lino Broca, a national artist for film, directed it. And for the first time, after the parade of Dolphy films kung saan ang pagiging bakla ay joke and hanggang surface value lang, hanggang performance lang, na-humanize ng ang tatay kong nanay yung stereotype na parloristang bakla. Na yes, it begins with showing the stereotype, but then it unpeels the many layers of the character until makita mo na tao siya sa ilalim ng lahat ng makeup na yon, sa ilalim ng wig na yon. At ganun din yung nangyari sa Markova, Comfort Gay, which was later on, early 2000s, dahil pinakita naman na biktima siya ng, yung mga bading na to, ay biktima ng pang-aabuso rin ng mga Hapon. And hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na sila ay duwag at sila ay mahina dahil pinakita ng pelikula yung dami ng pagdurusa na kinailangan nilang harapin sa ilalim ng mga Hapon. Interestingly, Dolphy won the Best Actor Award in Cairo Film Festival for this role, for Markova, and also the Best Actress Award. Well, nung mga panahon na yon, nung nanalo siya ng Best Actress, tandang-tanda ko na sobrang saya ng Pilipinas kasi grabe, legend si Dolphy. Hindi lang Best Actor na panalunan niya, Best Actress din. But, kung ngayon yun mangyayari, sobrang malinaw kasi, una na lahat, hindi naman siya bading. Pagkatapos, hindi rin naman siya babae. Okay. So, let's move on to the next figure na madalas nating kinalakhan ng marami sa atin. Yes, mga aso sa kapag paligiran ko nag-iingay. Okay. Si Roderick Paulate. And the Curse of Queerness. Now, Roderick Paulate is very iconic pagdating sa mga gay roles niya. Dead na si Lolo, patayin sa Shokot si Remington, Zombadings, Petrang Kabayo, sa Okie Dokie Doc, at saka Bala at Lipstick. And to be fair kay Roderick Paulate, pagdating dun sa mga pagdating sa mga gay roles ni Roderick Paulate, especially this one MMK niya, mas makikita natin na mas tao na yung bakla sa kanya. Like, nakasentro yung problema sa bakla, nakasentro yung pelikula sa bakla, at tinutukso pa rin yung bakla. Pero ina-assert niya talaga yung power niya in spaces where that he takes up. The problem is, kahit na sobrang powerful and sobrang assertive ng mga gay characters ni Roderick Paulate, for some reason, lagi silang hinahabol ng sumpa. Naging kabayo, kinulong dahil pinagkamalang siya yung pumatay doon sa isang sales lady ng mga lipstick. Habang buhay na itinago ang feelings niya para kay Doc Aga. Nag-raise ng maraming zombies na bakla sa Zombadings. So meron pa rin problema. Kasi kahit nakikita mo na yes, this gay character asserts himself in in various spaces. At what cost? Dahil magiging kabayo siya in the middle of the movie. May bubuhayin siyang mga bakla, may mabubuhayin siyang mga patay ang gagawing zombadings. Lastly, para sa mga pinaka-recent nating representative ay si Vice Ganda. Vice Ganda definitely is a step up. Whatever our opinion is of Vice Ganda, definitely step up siya pagdating sa representation mainly because he is part, I don't know how they identify, so they na lang. Mainly because they are part of the community they are representing. Vice Ganda, kung alam ko na a lot of bad stuff has been said about Vice Ganda's films, especially every time na nakukuha siya sa MMFF. But kapag papanoorin natin actually ang mga pelikula ni Vice Ganda, makikita natin na they are more progressive than we think. Na yung gender politics niya actually ay mas progresibo kaysa sa kung anong iniisip natin. Kapag nakafocus lang tayo dun sa pagiging insult comic niya, siguro magiging masama yung slight yung tingin natin. Pero kung titingnan natin yung politika ng mga pelikula niya, makikita natin na may pagkilala siya na hindi yung pagiging bakla ay hindi lang face. May pagkilala siya na yung pagiging bakla ay hindi sumpa. May pagkilala siya na ang pagiging bakla ay hindi ibig sabihin na kawalan ng kapangyarihan. And also, it's worth noting na sa unang bahagi ng presentation, nung nakatuon pa tayo kay Dolphy, si Dolphy, ang tampulan ng tukso. The queer, kahit kay Roderick Paulate, queerness has always been the joke. But with Vice Ganda, sa mga pelikula ni Vice Ganda, dahil insult comic siya, the queer person is making a joke out of everyone else. So there's this reversal of power na although not ideal, kasi parang magiging dating siguro ay so now the queer person is the oppressor, yung queer person ngayon ang nanunukso at nangungutya. But at the same time, kung titingnan natin kung saan nanggaling tayo when it comes to representation of queer people in the media, makikita pa rin natin na merong nangyaring shift. And that is worth noting still. Also, the difference is with Vice Ganda is because hindi siya nag-exist lang doon sa mga pelikula. Nag-exist din siya maging sa tunay na buhay dahil sa Showtime. So meron siyang access sa kung paano niya ikukwento ang naratibo ng mga bading. Now, meron tong kakulangan at merong kagandahan. Kagandahan because dahil kay Vice Ganda, na-humanize ng I believe na maraming napamahal, dahil maraming napamahal kay Vice Ganda na masa, naging mas accepting din sila of queer people. Pero, hindi siya sapat. Kasi, kailangan ba na parating nakakatawa ka kagaya ni Vice Ganda para ikaw ay tanggapin at mahalin? Kailangan ba pakita mo na matalino ka rin kagaya ni Vice Ganda para ikaw ay maging karapat-dapat na mahalin? Also, hindi naman sharpest yung politika ni Vice Ganda to begin with. And also, Vice Ganda cannot possibly cover the struggles of the whole spectrum ng LGBTQIA community. And it is very difficult it is very difficult and it's very harmful na mag-resort tayo to personality politics na kesyo okay si Vice Ganda, they are representing us, therefore we are doing good. No. So, how do we remedy this? Next slide. Ikumpara natin ngayon sa kung ano yung nangyayari sa Hollywood. Kung tutusin, napakalayo natin sa Hollywood in terms of representation and representation behind the screen, like behind the camera rather. Because napaka-kumpara sa Hollywood, matriarchal ang Philippine cinema. Kumpara sa Hollywood, mas marami tayong mga baklang filmmakers, mas marami tayong mga baklang screenwriters. Sa Hollywood, dominated sila by the cis-hetero male filmmakers kasi. So we are supposedly ahead of them. But why are we not feeling it yet? Next slide. Just recently, a few years ago, Scarlett Johansson received flack for accepting a transgender role And then very recently, Eddie Redmayne received flack for defending J.K. Rowling, who's a trans-exclusionary feminist, after winning Best Actor Oscar for a trans woman part. Next. We often hear about the discourse tungkol sa pagkakast ng queer actors for queer roles, for queer parts. But I believe na hindi lang yon tungkol sa kung sino yung nakikita natin sa screen. Importante rin kung sino ba yung nasa likod. For this part, I want you to watch the trailer of this documentary made by trans people about trans people in the media and for trans people. So, and please, if you have the time, and please make time, after ng talk na to, anytime you want, please watch Disclosure on Netflix. Can we play the trailer, please?
I can't even tell you how many times I've been in public space, particularly early in my transition, when I would walk into a subway car and people would just burst into laughter. And I think people are been trained to have that reaction. According to a study from GLAAD, 80% of Americans don't actually personally know someone who is transgender. So most of the information that Americans get about who transgender people are, what our lives are and are about, comes from the media.
We've been around since there was footage. You just have to look for us.
Can we all just talk about D.W. Griffith for a minute? Not only is he incredibly racist, but he turned gender non-conforming people into the joke.
So it's like you can't have like queer trans people and blackness in the same space at the same time. So what's to say about my queer trans black ass?
They've died so many times they can't even count on camera.
I've been a prostitute 1, prostitute 2, call girl, hooker.
The crying game created a ripple effect.
You are a trans person who existed, made people physically ill. Was the way in which my favorite movie as a child ended.
There are lots of ugly things about our history, but I think we have to know them.
I have been beaten. I have been thrown in jail for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way?
There is a one-word solution to almost all the problems in trans media. We just need more. And that way, the occasional clumsy representation wouldn't matter as much because it wouldn't be all that there is.
You see a fierceness that's coming up now. That's because we ain't got nothing to lose.
These are my sisters up here, but the struggle is real.
The ways in which trans people have been represented have suggested that we're mentally ill, that we don't exist. And yet here we are, and we've always been here.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like you to take note of that one quote, that one soundbite from the trailer. Na kapag mas marami na ang pinapalabas, those clumsy, irresponsible, and unreal portrayal of queer roles or transgender roles wouldn't matter as much because hindi na lang yun yung magiging available sa kanila. And I think na for the first few, the many decades ng Philippine cinema, that has always been the problem. We don't see much. We only see Dolphy, Roderick Paulate, Michael V, and now Vice Ganda. Sila lang yung nasa mainstream. At hindi nila yun posible makuha na parating tama. So, what do we do now? Next slide, please. We tell stories because we want to move people, and we move people by telling stories. We make them care. When we open ourselves up to stories, when we read books or we watch movies or just talk to strangers, what we do is we exercise empathy. A good story will make us care. We want the leads to get together in the end. We want the hero to win against the villain. We cry when they fail. Our hearts swell when they succeed. We need to keep telling these stories of people from the margins if you want society to treat them better and to recognize their equal rights. And we started the talk earlier with Jaws, right? Sa mga pating. At partida mga pating pa lang yung pinag-uusapan natin. At triple effect lang yung takot natin ng isang critically acclaimed worldwide box office hit. Pero nakikita at nararamdaman pa rin natin yung effect nito. Hanggang ngayon, takot pa rin tayong lahat sa pating. Pero paano pa yung isang daang taon ng kakulangan at kamalian ng representasyon sa LGBTQIA community sa Philippine cinema or sa mainstream media? In all fairness, we have one thing that the sharks don't. We have the ability to tell our stories. We have the ability to take up space in platforms that allow us to tell our stories, and we should. And we are. But also, unlike Jaws, one movie is not enough. One TV series, one book, one graphic novel, these aren't enough. We are a diverse community that has long been deprived the chance of putting our stories out there under the spotlight. And one piece of media cannot possibly cover every hue of our spectrum. Next slide. When I created Gaya Sa Pelikula, ilan lamang ito sa mga naging ilan lamang to sa mga ipinangako namin sa aming sarili. One is, at gusto ko lang i-share dahil sana marami pang iba na mga production that deal with queer stories would implement these. Number one, we want to employ queer professionals, as many queer professionals and talents as possible. I don't know if you've heard, but Directonet Hadaone for Fangirl got an all-girl team para mag-camera operators. That way, magiging malaya from the male gaze yung pelikula niya. What we have found by employing queer professionals and talents sa Gaya Sa Pelikula is that there will always be nuances that are specific to us queer people na hindi makukuha ng straight. Hindi talaga. May mga araw sa GSP na maging ang camera operator namin ay miyembro ng komunidad. Ang nagbihis kina Ian at Paolo, bisexual. Ang nag-design ng set namin, pansexual. Ang director namin ay bading. Ang location manager namin ay lesbian, ang contributing writer ko, bading din. And nasusurpresa kami how all these things just come out of us nang hindi namin sinasadya, na hindi dinidirect ni JP, na hindi ko dinidikta sa script. Lumalabas yung mga nuances na to because they are specific to our personal lived experiences. One reaction video I watched from GSP, umiiyak siya sa isang parte, tapos meron siyang sinasabi na isang bahagi ng palabas na hindi niya pa raw yun nakikita ever sa kahit anong queer media na napanood niya. Tapos inisip ko, di naman namin yung sinadya. Pinupuri niya kasi kami, tapos kami parang, di naman namin yung sinadya eh. But I guess that's the point. When we are allowed to tell our own stories, may mga katotohanan na lumalabas na hindi mo pwedeng makita kapag straight ang nagkwento ng mga kwento natin. And that is also why we must cast queer actors for queer roles as much as possible. I say as much as possible because maraming detalye rito na nagpapagulo ng lahat. For example, dahil we still live in a very in a society that refuses to acknowledge our equality. So therefore, marami pa rin mga bading na artista ang takot na mag-out. And kapag sinabi natin na we're only casting queer roles, para na rin nating in-out yung mga nasa closet pa na queer actors na gusto sanang maging bahagi ng production natin, right? Pwede ring kinikilala natin na kapag yung katotohanan na kapag nag-cast tayo ng somebody na parang na wala masyadong reach, ang mangyayari ay mababaon yung kwento natin at wala siyang masyadong mararating. Ngayon, kung sakali na wala talaga tayong makast na queer actor for the queer parts that we're casting for, the least that we can do is to align the actor's politics with that of the story. For example, Game Boys did so well with this because Elijah Canlas especially is such a staunch ally of the LGBTQIA community. Elijah and I talked once about GSP, tapos kung paanong he would love the chance to get other queer parts, pero every time na pipiliin ng creators na mag-cast ng queer actors instead, ay parati siyang mag-give way because that's the least that he can do. Next, we must write more roles that cover more of the LGBTQIA spectrum. I tell you, ang BL, nag-surge ang BL last year, pero simula pa lang siya. It's not enough na nakikita natin ang dalawang straight passing na lalaki na nagmamahalan on screen. Napakarami pang miyembro ng LGBTQIA community na hindi pa natin nakikita sa screen, na napapayagang magmahalan sa screen. At kailangan natin magsulat ng marami pang material para sa kanila. Ngayon, hindi ako ang tamang tao, for example, para magsulat at magkwento ng kwento ng dalawang lesbians. Hindi rin ako ang tamang tao para magkwento ng mga kwento of our siblings of trans feminine experience. So the least that I can do as a storyteller, as a creator, is to pass the mic to the next queer storyteller who will tell these stories. Is to lend my platform to them when their chance to tell their own stories is up. At sana ganun din tayo bilang audience. And we need to do this again and again, all these processes again and again, until we are able to saturate the market with queer stories so that queer stories are normalized. Kagaya nung sinabi kanina sa trailer ng disclosure, parating merong mga clumsy, parating merong mga irresponsable, parating may mga transphobic at backwards na magiging representasyon kung saan ang mga bading ay mananatili lang na stereotypical at yung pagiging stereotypical nila ay hindi mauungkat hanggang hindi ma-flesh out yung human inside the stereotypes and the archetypes. Mangyayari pa rin siya. Nangyayari siya kahit sa mga kababaihan ngayon. But the key is to saturate the market. Kasi kapag marami na tayo nakikita masyado na stories about queer people, hindi na masyadong ang magmamatter, kagaya sinabi kanina, hindi na masyadong magmamatter yung mga pangit na representasyon. The same way na, halimbawa, probably a bad example, but you see how inaaway ng PNP ang probinsyano before, dahil ang pangit ng portrayal umano sa mga pulis na violent kasi yung mga pulis doon at umabot sa point na kalaban yung mga pulis. Bakit sila may pakialam doon? Because may kakayahan yun na mag-shape ng kanilang narrative and public perception sa kanila. People in the margins should be allowed to do that as well. To protest whenever we feel like we are not being properly represented. Kasi, halimbawa, pwede kang makakita ng isang straight character na maging sobrang evil sa teleserye. Dahil marami naman ng mga characters na straight na nakita mong mababait. Pwede kang magkaroon ng maraming Clara dahil marami na rin naging Mara. Pero kapag ang ginawa mong Clara ay isang bading, pwede tayong umalma. Dahil minsan na nga lang natin nakikita na ang sarili natin sa mainstream media pagkatapos ipoportray pa tayo bilang mga masama. Yun yung pagkakaiba nun. And lastly, I believe, is that we should take the fight beyond the screen. Because at the end of the day, representation will not save us. Representation will not make things better for everyone. Hanggat wala tayong proper na legislation na pumoprotekta sa atin, kahit gaano kabuti, kahit gaano ka-layered, kahit gaano ka-nuanced ang performance at ang pagkakasulat sa mga queer characters in the media, hindi pa rin magiging ganoon kabuti ang estado ng LGBTQIA community mismo. So, to end, ang sinasabi ko ay, we must support the ADB. We must support SOGI equality now, pass the ADB now. Kagaya ng sinabi ko, as a cisgendered gay man who tells stories and who has heard through my who has been heard through my relatively wide platform, it is my duty to pass the mic to the next queer storyteller who will get the chance to tell stories that I cannot and I should not. And by that, I mean those who can adequately tell our stories tell stories about the lesbian experience, the trans experience, and so on and so forth. And being heard, being able to tell your story should not be a privilege. But because we live in a society that still refuses to acknowledge our equality, it still feels like it is. So please let us lend our platforms to storytellers from the margins. And tayo, bilang may audience, let us demand for better content. And because in storytelling, we should demand for better content, and we as an audience need to support queer stories, to let the powers that be, the studios, the cinemas, the cinema owners, the producers, we need to let them know that we are here and we want to see ourselves on screen. So please let us support, because every time that we support a queer narrative, a queer piece of media, what we tell the powers that be is, I see myself here and I want more of it. I recently pitched a second season of Gaya Sa Pelikula to the powers that be. And to close my talk, I'd like to lend you the last line of that pitch. It says, "There is a place for our stories here, and we must take it." So let us all take it. Maraming salamat, TaskUs, for having me.
Much, Mr. Juan Miguel Severo. Grabe, sobrang on point ng mga tinalakay mo ngayon, at it was very enlightening, really. And we could really see how the media that we consumed progressed over the years. And daming nating pwedeng pagnilayan mamayang gabi bago matulog. At dahil nga on point ang mga tinalakay mo, ang dami ring natuwa at nagsang-ayon sa ating comment section kanina. Kaya naman basahin natin ang ilan sa mga ito. Ayan. Mula sa ating audience members, and just share the love. Yes.
Hi, Red. Kilala ko si Red.
Yeah. Hashtag SOGI equality now, pass ADB now. Yes. This is our call to action. SOGI equality ensures everyone, and mas maraming tagong queer women sa Pinas kasi ang society ay medyo malupit na nga sa kabalbalan. Kababaihan. I'm saying I'm really sorry. Alright, sa mga kababaihan, lalo na sa mga queer. Good point. And as allies, we should listen, understand, and accept. Yes, that is true. Alright, nakaka-inspire, sabi ni NJ Bilugan. And yes, Gege, season 2. Ayan.
Sabi ko ay quit. Hindi ko sinabing confirmed.
Nakar. Kalma lang kayo, guys. Kalma lang. Okay. Ayan. So, agree. Ayan. So, ayan. From our team, thank you so much. And thank you so much. Ayan. Maraming salamat, Juan Miguel. And of course,
thank you.
Ayan. So, again, shout out sa ating mga kababayan ko. Ayan. So, comment nyo lang ang inyong mga tanong at komento kung meron man. Ayan. Sa ating mga audience members. So, feel free to throw in your questions if you have any. And just to start off this roundtable discussion, so Juan Miguel, I'd just like to ask, so here in TaskUs, we've always supported people's passion and purpose. And for those aspiring writers and visual storytellers, how important is it to align your real life persona, the real life persona of your cast, with the characters that you have in a series or in a movie that you're creating?
Hindi sa persona. Ako, okay lang kung malayo yung persona sa character. But yung politics, yung importante na aligned. For example, if you are going to tell a story about martial law, and then your main actor in real life turns out to be a historical revisionist or a Marcos supporter, then you did wrong. Because once the movie ends, magpapatuloy ang conversation. At sa pagpapatuloy ng conversation, yung pinili mong torchbearer ng pelikula mo refutes the claim of your art, of the piece of art you created. So therefore, it's all for naught. Kasi kahit na gaano ka progressive ang palabas na ginawa mo, kung pagdating sa real life, yung the face of your politics doon sa pelikula does not believe in it and believes otherwise pa, believes the opposite pa, mas lalo kang dito step backwards siya. You cannot cast a neo-Nazi for a film about a German concentration camp, right? The same way na we should not cast somebody who's against the Soji bill for a queer part. Kasi mag-humanize niya pagkatapos pagdating sa labas, papakita niya na that was just play. That was just me acting. That's not true. That's not real life. Especially here in the Philippines, Rex, na sobrang blurred ng lines between real and real, na to the point na si Maylin Dizon ay tinutusok-tusok pa rin ng payong sa mall ng mga lola for being a kontrabida, right? So importante na binaback up pa nila yung politika nung yung political stance nung pelikula o nung palabas.
Yes, that's true. And I just really want to, in a perfect world siguro, maganda rin na makita na natin in the near future na nagbe-blur na yung lines between reality and fiction, and we really see this progressive connection between the stories that people create. And given that you've also discussed earlier about taking back our story, so what is the role of our audiences in taking back our story? Like, for most of us who are not part of the creative process, so what can we do to contribute or even hold content creators accountable?
Demand better. If nakita mo na you are being misrepresented, call them out. Pero at una sa lahat, kailangan mo munang suportahan. I created a quote-unquote BL series, so I'll stick with it. I'll stick with that muna. BL used to be the BL from years ago are very problematic compared to the BLs na lumalabas these days. Ang daming may sexual assault, may nire-romanticize ang sexual assault, nire-romanticize and may erasure ng queer identity. Madalas sabihin doon yung I am not gay, I just like him. And those are very problematic. Pero kung hindi sila muna nasuportahan, hindi sila mababago. We need to support queer stories first and then be critical of these queer stories para sa mas maraming lalabas na magiging mas okay kaysa dun sa mga nauna.
Yeah. And yeah, I really appreciate that nagkakaroon tayo ng progression in the community with how the media that we consume nagpa-progress over the years. Like, the historical progression from Dolphy's films up to now and what we consume now on Netflix or in any digital platform. It's really refreshing for us to give new perspectives for people. And speaking of refreshing perspectives, what do you think is the role of companies like TaskUs in this kind of space, especially when in regard to representation?
Eto na yun. So, kasi kayo yung nasa tunay na mundo. Nasa tunay na mundo kayo eh. Nasa tunay na mundo itong mga spaces na to. And first, ako bilang storyteller, bilang series creator, I can show young queer kids a character who feels safe in the environment kung saan siya nagtatrabaho, kung saan siya gumagalaw. So that kapag lumaki siya, he can expect na I can have that power too once I am working or kung saan man ako dumating. And a company like TaskUs, it's their task to make sure na that won't just be for show, na it will become a reality for that kid. It is very empowering and emboldening for young queer kids to see queer people in different positions of power. And even if they're not in positions of power, kahit makita lang nila na they are being treated with respect and acceptance sa kanilang workplace, for them to be to be reassured na once it's their turn, merong ganitong klaseng environment na mag-welcome sa kanila, nakikilalanin sila, nare-respetuhin sila at tatanggapin sila. Napaka-importante nun. So I guess doon pumapasok yung ganitong klaseng mga initiative. That's why I really appreciate this. Thank you again, TaskUs, for this initiative and for inviting me.
Yes, and of course, I just want to share to everyone, especially to our TaskUs peeps. So we're very lucky to be in a gender-inclusive workspace, not just pre-COVID when we're all together on site, but even in our virtual space that we could really feel or we could really express ourselves for who we are. So yeah, it was really a refreshing discussion. And muli maraming salamat, Mr. Juan Miguel Severo, and of course
Thank
to our
you!
maraming salamat. Kinikilabutan ako right now habang nagdi-discuss kayo. Pero
Bakit?
so galing. Maraming salamat. And so again to our audience members, let's give him a big round of virtual applause. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Maraming salamat. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, so there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. So again, that was Mr. Juan Miguel Severo. That was a very enlightening discussion and a very refreshing take on how we should consume and portray our LGBTQIA plus family in our media. So before we actually close our program, so again, shout out po sa mga kababayan ko. All right, so keep on sending your comments and your realizations from tonight's event. And I will be announcing the winners of our pop quiz earlier. Ayan na po mga kababayan, magkakasubukan na po ng swerte. Ayan na. So, I'll just give a shout out to the winners. The first is Althea Kahayag from CHR. She got the right answer with all gender restrooms, or CR. And then the second winner, we have Jericho Fermin. All right. And the next one, Jericho Fermin, who got the answer of MJ Bilugan. Yes. And the third winner is Ronmar, not sure if I'm going to pronounce it right, Haen or Jaen. Okay, so Ronmar Haen from Lizzie Snook, and he got the correct answer of Juan Miguel Severo. Napakabilis nga naman mag-type. And of course, congratulations sa ating mga winners. So again, mag-reach out po sa inyo ang ating Unicorns at TaskUs organizers para sa inyong mga premyo. Ayan. So again, congratulations. And sa mga susunod na events ng Unicorns at TaskUs, ganyan lang ang mga galawan natin. Pabilisan lang ng pindutan dyan. But pabilisan din naman sa ating pagsuporta sa ating mga LGBTQIA+ family members here in TaskUs. And speaking of which, I would like to extend our gratitude to our TaskUs leaders for continuously supporting our initiatives, and of course to our technical team, to the whole organizing committee of Unicorns at TaskUs. Maraming salamat sa pagbuo ng isang malakwakang jumpstart for Unicorns at TaskUs. All right? And it's been a pleasure of mine to be invited to host in the very first event of Unicorns at TaskUs. Maraming salamat. And again, thank you so much to our special guest, Mr. Juan Miguel Severo. And to end the night with a takeaway from Juan Miguel So we tell stories because we want to move people, and we move people through our ability to tell the story. So let's tell stories that strive for truth and in and beyond the screen. So once again, I am Rexler Bayani. Have a ridiculously refreshing night and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.